Ethan Carter was a young pilot from Earth who had never been inside a royal palace before. When his ship landed in the kingdom of Valoria, he felt small compared to the tall towers and golden gates. He was not used to such beauty and order. His job was simple. He had to escort a group of diplomats to the palace and make sure they were safe. He thought he would never even speak to the queen. She was a person far above his world. He was only a soldier, nothing more. But fate worked in strange ways. As he walked through the grand halls, his eyes caught sight of a woman standing near a fountain inside the palace garden. She wore a long silver dress that sparkled in the sunlight. Her dark hair flowed gently as the wind touched it. Her face was calm but carried a weight of responsibility. Ethan did not know who she was. He thought she was maybe another guest at the palace, someone important but not the queen herself. Without thinking, he gave her a smile and joked in his casual way, "Hey babe." The words slipped out before he could stop them. As soon as they left his mouth, he felt his heart jump in panic. What if she was offended? What if she told the guards? But instead of anger, something else happened. The woman's cheeks turned red, her lips curved into a small smile, and her eyes softened in a way that surprised him. She looked at him as if no one had ever spoken to her like that before. She held her composure, but a blush betrayed her heart. At that moment, Ethan realized the truth. He had just spoken to Queen Isabella, the ruler of Valoria. He wanted to hide. His thoughts raced as he waited for her reaction. The guards nearby shifted uneasily, not sure if they should step in. But Isabella raised her hand slightly, signaling them to stay back. She did not scold him. She did not look insulted. Instead, she gave him a look that was both curious and amused. Ethan's nervous smile remained on his face, though inside he was sure his career had ended. To his shock, Isabella did not send him away. She asked him his name in a voice that was calm yet kind. Ethan answered quickly, telling her he was only a pilot with no great rank. She nodded as if his rank did not matter. She spoke with a softness that made him feel at ease. For the first time since arriving at the palace, he forgot about the pressure of standing before royalty. She was not speaking as a queen then. She was speaking as a woman. The garden was quiet around them, the sound of water from the fountain filling the silence. Sunlight shone through the leaves, casting shadows on the ground. Ethan felt time slow down, could not understand why she had not been offended. Maybe it was because she lived in a world where everyone bowed and spoke with formality. Maybe his careless words had touched something inside her that longed for normal human connection. Whatever it was, she did not walk away. She kept looking at him with that gentle smile. Ethan did not know what else to say. He felt awkward, but he also felt drawn to her. Isabella finally broke the silence by asking about his journey. Her voice was filled with genuine interest, not just polite duty. He spoke about his flight, the stars he saw, the endless quiet of space, and the thrill of flying. She listened closely, her eyes fixed on him as though each word mattered. For a moment he forgot she was a queen, and spoke as if she was simply a friend. When their short talk ended, Isabella excused herself with grace, but not before glancing back at him once more. That small look told him something he could not explain. He had made her blush. He had made her smile. And deep inside, she seemed grateful for the simple joke that broke through her wall of duty. Ethan stood frozen in the garden even after she left. He knew his life had just changed. He had stepped into a world he did not belong to, yet somehow he had touched the heart of a queen with only 3 careless words. Ethan tried to forget the strange meeting in the garden, but his mind would not let go of it. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see Queen Isabella's blush and the way her lips curved into a shy smile. He told himself it was only a small mistake, only a joke that somehow did not turn into a disaster. But deep inside, he felt something new. It was not only relief that she had not punished him, it was curiosity. He wanted to see her again, even if he knew that was foolish. The days passed slowly inside the palace. Ethan had his duties with the other guards and diplomats, but his eyes often wandered, searching for her in the long halls. He saw her once during a council meeting from afar. She sat tall on her throne, her silver crown shining under the light, her voice strong and calm as she listened to the advisors. She looked so different from the woman who had smiled at him in the garden. That day, she was a queen, untouchable, distant, and proud. Ethan reminded himself that he had no place near her. He was only a pilot. She ruled a whole kingdom, yet destiny seemed to bring them together again. One evening, Ethan was walking along the edge of the palace grounds when he heard soft footsteps, turned, and found Isabella standing under the glow of lanterns. She was alone, her guards kept at a distance. She looked at him and gave the same gentle smile she had given in the garden. Ethan froze, unsure if he should bow, salute, or run. But she spoke first. She asked him about his life on Earth, about the things he missed and the things he dreamed of. Her questions were not the empty kind of questions nobles often asked. They were real, and her eyes showed she wanted to hear the truth. Ethan told her about the quiet fields he grew up in, about the sound of rain on his window when he was a boy, and about how flying made him feel free. Isabella listened without interruption, her gaze soft and thoughtful. She told him in return how heavy the crown felt on her head, how lonely the throne could be, and how sometimes she wished she could walk through her kingdom without being recognized. Her voice trembled slightly, as if admitting these thoughts was a risk. Ethan realized then that she was not only a queen, she was also a woman who carried a burden she could not always share. As the nights went on, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes they met near the fountain, sometimes in the gardens, and sometimes in the quiet library when the halls were empty. They never spoke of duty or politics. Instead, they shared small stories, laughter, and moments of silence that felt strangely comfortable. Ethan discovered she had a laugh that was soft and rare, and Isabella discovered that his humor, though simple, made her forget the weight of her crown. She even teased him once about his first words to her, saying she had never been called babe in her life. Ethan turned red, but she laughed, and the sound of it stayed in his memory like a song. But it was not easy. Whispers began to spread in the palace. Servants saw them together more than once. Advisors noticed her gaze drifting toward him during formal events. Some called it improper, others called it dangerous. Ethan felt the eyes on his back whenever he walked through the halls. He knew people were talking, and he feared he might bring trouble to her. Yet Isabella did not seem to care. She continued to seek him out, her steps light but sure, as if she had already chosen to ignore the rules that bound her. One night, under a sky filled with stars, Isabella looked at him and asked if he ever thought about the future. Ethan did not know how to answer. His future was small compared to hers. He was meant to serve, to fly, to protect. She was meant to rule, to decide, to lead. Their paths should never cross. And yet here they were, standing side by side, closer than any law or tradition allowed. He saw the hope in her eyes and felt his heart tighten. He knew then that whatever happened next, his life was no longer his own. It was tied to hers in a way he could not break. Ethan knew the risk was growing. Every time he saw Queen Isabella, he felt the eyes of others following them. The whispers in the palace grew louder. Some of the council members began to question why the queen would spend her time with a simple pilot, when she had matters of state to think about. To them, Ethan was nothing more than a distraction. To Isabella, he was something different. Something she had not allowed herself to have before. He was a piece of freedom, a reminder of what it meant to be seen as a person, and not just as a ruler. One afternoon, during a council meeting, Ethan stood quietly along the wall, as guards usually did. Isabella sat on her throne, her voice calm as she listened to the endless talk of taxes, alliances, and threats from neighboring lands. But Ethan noticed how often her gaze drifted toward him. It was subtle, just a glance, but it was enough for the advisors to notice. Murmurs began to spread across the chamber. A man cleared his throat and dared to say aloud that the queen's focus seemed to be elsewhere. Isabella's expression turned cold, and she silenced the room with a single word. Still, the damage was done. Everyone saw that something unspoken was growing between them. Ethan tried to distance himself after that day. He told himself it would protect her if he stayed away, trained longer hours, took on more guard duties, and avoided the gardens at night. But Isabella did not let him disappear. One evening, she appeared in front of him while he was sharpening his blade. She asked why he had been avoiding her.
Eyes.
Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried sadness. Ethan explained that people were talking and he did not want to bring trouble to her throne. Isabella stepped closer and said she did not care about whispers. She told him that the council had always doubted her, even before he arrived, and she would not let fear decide her heart. Their closeness became harder to hide. Servants saw them walking together in the gardens. Guards noticed how she spoke to him in a softer tone than she used with anyone else. The palace was filled with quiet talk of scandal. But what made it worse was the danger outside the walls. Enemies of the kingdom had begun to stir. Messengers brought word that rival lords were planning attacks. They thought the queen was weak, distracted, and easy to overthrow. They believed her heart had made her careless. Isabella faced a growing storm both within her court and beyond her borders. One night as Ethan walked the outer walls, he heard a sound in the dark. A shadow moved quickly across the stones. Before he could call for help, an arrow shot past him and landed close to the queen's balcony. Ethan shouted for the guards, rushing forward to follow the figure, but the assassin vanished into the night. The message was clear. Someone wanted Isabella dead. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the danger she was in. This was no longer just about whispers. This was about survival. When he told Isabella what he had seen, she did not show fear. Instead, she looked tired, as if she had expected this moment to come. She told him that ruling a kingdom always meant standing in danger. Ethan felt anger rise inside him. He could not accept the idea that she should live every day under threat. He swore that he would protect her, even if it cost him his life. Isabella looked at him with a warmth that words could not explain. For a brief moment, her hand touched his, and she whispered that his presence gave her strength. The days that followed were tense. Guards doubled their watch, but the threat still lingered in the air. The council grew more restless, some saying that Ethan himself was the cause of this chaos. They claimed he had brought danger to the queen by being near her. Ethan heard their words, but said nothing. Deep inside, he wondered if they were right. But when Isabella stood before him and told him she trusted him more than anyone else, the doubt faded away. Ethan understood now that their bond was more than chance. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also powerful. He saw the courage in her eyes, and he knew he could not turn away. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together, no matter what the world thought of them. The night of the ceremony arrived, a night meant to celebrate peace between kingdoms. The palace was filled with music, laughter, and the soft glow of candles. Noble families gathered in fine clothing, their voices rising in polite conversations. Queen Isabella walked into the hall wearing a gown of deep blue, her crown resting lightly on her head. She looked every part the ruler she was, proud and graceful. But Ethan, standing in the shadows near the edge of the room, knew that danger was close. His eyes searched every corner, every movement, waiting for a sign. The council had warned her not to let him guard that night. They said it was improper, that he was too close, that whispers of scandal were already hurting her rule. Isabella ignored them. She trusted Ethan more than anyone, and she wanted him near. Ethan knew the risk. If something went wrong, he would be blamed, but he did not care. His only thought was to keep her safe. As the ceremony began, music filled the hall, and dancers moved across the floor. Isabella spoke to her guests with calm dignity, but Ethan noticed her glancing at him now and then. Her eyes held both comfort and worry. She knew what he was watching for, and then it happened. A shadow moved across the balcony above, too fast for ordinary eyes to notice, but Ethan saw it. His instinct screamed danger. Without thinking, he pushed through the crowd, his hand on his weapon. An arrow shot from the balcony, its path aimed straight for Isabella. The hall filled with gasps and screams. In that instant, Ethan leapt forward, his body moving faster than his mind could follow. He threw himself in front of the queen, grabbing her and pulling her to the ground. The arrow struck the wall behind them, its tip quivering in the stone. Guards rushed forward, chaos exploding in the room as more shouts filled the air. Ethan held Isabella close, his heart pounding, his eyes scanning for the attacker. More arrows rained down from above, covered her with his body, guiding her toward the safety of a column. The guards finally reached the balcony, clashing with the assassin hidden there. Steel rang out in the air. The guests screamed and fled, the hall turning from celebration to panic. Isabella clutched Ethan's arm, her face pale, but her eyes burning with resolve. She did not scream. She did not break. She looked at him with a strength that steadied his own fear. The fight ended quickly. The assassin was caught, dragged away in chains, but the damage was already done. The council gathered at once, their voices rising in anger. They claimed that the queen's closeness with Ethan had brought weakness to the throne. That enemy saw an opening and dared to strike because she had allowed herself to be distracted. Ethan stood silently, blood on his hands from the struggle, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He expected Isabella to agree with them, to distance herself from him at last. But Isabella rose to her feet and silenced the room with a single gesture. She stood tall before her people, her voice strong and steady. She declared that Ethan had saved her life, that his courage had protected not only her, but the entire kingdom. She told the council that trust and loyalty mattered more than tradition, and that a heart willing to sacrifice itself was greater than any law written on paper. The hall grew silent as her words filled the air. Some bowed their heads in shame. Others looked away, unwilling to admit her truth. Ethan's heart swelled at her words. He had expected blame, but instead she had defended him before all. Isabella stepped toward him then, her eyes softening as she whispered, so only he could hear. She told him that she would not hide anymore, that she had chosen to stand beside him no matter the cost. Ethan felt his throat tighten, his chest heavy with emotion he could not speak aloud. He simply nodded, his eyes locking with hers in silent promise. That night, when the hall was quiet again, and the danger had passed, Ethan stood with Isabella in the garden, where they had first met. The fountain still poured softly, the stars still shone above, but everything felt different. They were no longer strangers bound by accident. They were two lives tied together by choice and by courage. And though the world might not understand, Ethan knew he would follow her anywhere. Through fire or storm, for as long as he lived. The days after the ceremony were filled with tension. The council argued more than ever, voices sharp and heavy with doubt. They spoke of the arrow attack as a warning, saying that enemies outside the kingdom were growing bold. Some still blamed Ethan, claiming that his presence had turned the queen's focus away from her duty, but Isabella refused to listen. She made her choice clear to all of them. She told the council that loyalty was not measured by noble birth but by actions. And in front of everyone she declared that Ethan was the reason she was alive. Ethan kept close to her side after that night. He walked the halls with her, guarded her chambers, and stood near her during meetings. Many eyes followed him, some filled with suspicion, others with quiet respect. The common people began to whisper stories of the brave pilot who had saved their queen. Some even called him a hero. Ethan did not feel like one. He still saw himself as a simple man who had been in the right place at the right time. But whenever Isabella looked at him with her steady eyes, he began to believe that maybe his life had a greater purpose now. One evening, Isabella asked Ethan to meet her in the royal gardens. The moon was bright above, casting silver light across the fountain where they had first spoken. She walked slowly, her gown brushing the grass, her crown absent from her head. She looked less like a queen and more like a woman seeking peace. Ethan felt his chest tighten as he waited for her words. She told him that the kingdom was strong again, that the council had been silenced by her decision, but she admitted that her heart was restless. She confessed that she had grown tired of always being seen only as a queen. With him, she said, she felt human again. Her voice trembled as she asked if he regretted that first careless joke, the words that had begun everything. Ethan smiled softly and shook his head. He told her that those words had changed his life, and no matter the risk, he was glad they had slipped out. For a long moment they stood in silence. The sound of the fountain filled the air. The night was still, almost as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then Ethan, with a small grin, repeated the words that had once made her blush. He whispered, "Hey, babe." Isabella's face turned crimson, just as it had that first day. But this time, she did not look away. She stepped closer to him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. She leaned toward him, her voice soft but filled with warmth. She whispered back, "Yes, darling." The words carried more than playfulness. They carried trust, love, and the promise of a future neither of them had imagined. From that night on, they no longer hid their bond. The court learned to accept it, even if grudgingly, because the people themselves supported it. The story of the queen and the pilot spread through villages and towns, told by families around fires, sung by travelers on the roads. To the people it was more than a romance. It was a sign that even the highest crown could find strength in the heart of someone ordinary. Ethan and Isabella faced many trials after that. There were still threats from rival lords, still battles to fight, still councils to argue with. But no matter how heavy the days became, they carried each other through. Ethan never forgot that he was once a simple man, but he also knew that love had made him part of something greater. Isabella never forgot that she was a queen, but she also knew she was more than her crown. With Ethan, she was human, free, and loved. The garden remained their secret place, the fountain their witness. Whenever the weight of the world pressed too hard, they would return there. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they sat in silence, but always they remembered the words that began their story. A joke, a blush, a whisper, and from those small things, a bond that could not be broken grew stronger with every day. In the end, their love became legend. And though history would record Isabella as a queen of wisdom and courage, those who truly knew her story remembered her also as the woman who blushed when a simple pilot dared to say, "Hey, babe," and who answered with the quiet truth of her heart, "Yes, darling."